marine biologist. I grew up in the Caribbean, so on an island, well, several islands, Trinidad and Tobago, surrounded by water, and it meant that I just spent a lot of time in the ocean, on the ocean, and playing with animal life, basically, if you will, and ocean life. And it's really where like this love for the ocean and all within it grew. And since I was little, like a kid, I was obsessed with sharks, like obsessed. I had all the books, I had a watch, I had all the shark things. And I remember watching shark shows. And I mean, this is like 30 years ago, 20 years ago, right? And so shark shows back then, and it was all the only shark content on TV. Shark shows back then are very different to what it is now, and are very different to, for instance, Shark Attack 360, which comes out next week. In that now, this take by National Geographic centers science and conservation. And I love that, because that's what we need to do in order to dispel this narrative and this perception that everyone has about sharks, that there's something that we need to fear and something we need to be worried about, rather than these are really important animals and we need to do everything we can to conserve them.
I completely agree. I would say like when we are in the ocean and if we do see, sharks or other animals, how would you like say that a person would approach it? Because I feel like if you go in scared, the animal can always sense it, and I know they can like hear your heartbeat. I remember being on the boat and the instructor was like, they can actually hear your heartbeat. That's why they kind of came close to the boat. So how would kind of someone interact if they're kind of in the ocean and they're caught off guard by a shark?
That's a great question. There's a lot of information out there, and a lot more qualified people who can speak on that. But what I will say is that I think with any wild animal, and of course sharks are wild animals, we have to approach everything with respect, right? Ultimately, these are wild animals, and we would never run into the middle of the Kenyan savannah where a lion is chilling with his pride, right? And that's the same for sharks. We need to keep our distance. We need to respect these animals and remember that we are in their home. And if and also like there's certain things we can do, like not necessarily swimming at dusk or dawn, or avoiding murky water, or avoiding places where fish are being cleaned, like fishing stations and so on. So there are things that can be done, but ultimately approaching everything with respect. And if you begin to feel uncomfortable, then just remove yourself from the situation as well. But I think, like you, like me, for most people who have been in the water with a shark, whatever kind it might be, it is it's a life-changing experience, and you leave the ocean just feeling like the luckiest person in the world.
I completely agree. And they were actually swimming away from me, so they didn't want anything to do with me.
And that's the thing, right? Is like humans and sharks have coexisted since humanity's existed, right? If you have been in the sea, it is likely that you have had a shark close by. Just you were minding your own business, and the shark was minding his own business. Everyone has things to get on with, right? And so that's how it is normally, and that's how we need to continue to behave. Most of the time, they don't want to be around us, and we don't necessarily sometimes want to be around them. And we just need to coexist and ultimately help sharks to continue existing on this planet.
And like, what can we do to help them? I know like all of these environmental changes are, affecting their habitat. And would you also say like that effect could also have increased some of the attacks because we're kind of pushing them out of the water almost?
Such a great question. And you know what? There is actually a really great example of that in Shark Attack 360. We actually go to Brazil, to a town called Recife. And I don't want to ruin it, but that is a really good example of where our actions, human actions, have led to a change in behavior in sharks that has led to an increase in bites. And it's totally our fault at the end of the day. And we're seeing that time and time again. Ultimately, we are changing the ocean, we are changing the planet, and we don't often understand the knock-on effects from those changes, right? So we need to do more to conserve sharks. We are fishing the heck out of them. Shark populations have decreased like 70% globally. We kill about 80 million sharks a year from fishing. And we're pushing sharks, as you say, closer and closer to extinction. And this is something that we need to correct because sharks are so, so important to a healthy and resilient ocean.
What can we learn from today's shark attacks to like prevent them in the future and to protect sharks more and obviously us?
So Shark Attack is a really good example of where we are using these incredibly rare incidents, right, bites, to learn as much as we can about these animals. This show essentially is like almost like CSI, where we piece together the different clues from different incidents to then think about how, to essentially understand more about the natural behavior of sharks in that they don't often target humans, right? It's often a case of mistaken identity. And so this is again putting this show puts science and conservation at the heart of it and really is such a visually stunning experience. Like it's so funny. When I filmed it, I was in this enormous space, just essentially by myself, right? And when you watch the show, there I am next to this like enormous great white shark, right? And so I feel like I've almost like cheated a little bit and been able to experience these sharks in a way I never thought I would be able to. But I just love the use of graphics to really convey the size of some of these animals, to be able to look at parts of their internal anatomy that you would never get the chance to see. Like it's using technology and it's using science to make learning about sharks and understanding their behavior fun and exciting. And I love
So what is it like being next to such a I can't even describe, like, I've always wanted to, like, be in the water with a great white, but, like, a part of me is like, maybe you should, like, go up the ladder of the sharks before you go in the water with a great white."
So it's funny, I've also never been in the water with a great white, but in the show,
Yeah.
we have like CGI sharks, basically VFX sharks, that join us in the lab. So that's what I meant. But um, I've been in the water with lots and lots of different species. My gosh, so many different species, but never great whites. But perhaps the biggest I've done was in the Maldives, were whale sharks, and obviously they're like the totally different end of the spectrum in that they're the biggest, but they also largely eat plankton. They don't really have any teeth. So they're like the gentle giants of sharks. But lots of different sharks, from sandbar sharks. And I did, again, like you, Hawaii was like a shark hotspot where it was just so great. Every time you're scuba diving, you'd often see one and a different species. And it was just great. And there are just so few places left like that in the world where you are able to see these animals in their natural habitat and see the effect that they have on the rest of the ecosystem.
It's truly amazing. When you're making a show like this and going into it, what are some of, like, the main elements and the main things that you want everybody to learn from it and debunk myths, basically, of sharks?
Oh, that is a great question. And I'd say there are four things that I think all shark shows should try to convey. And because media is such an important tool, right? These shows are such important tools for education. So the first one is that sharks are incredibly cool. They are older than the rings of Saturn, perfectly evolved as a top predator, and capable of super cool behavior. Second thing is that sharks are really important. They are critical for healthy marine ecosystems. They weed out the sick and weak to make fish populations healthier. They keep all other fish and seafood populations, fish and invertebrate populations, I should say, in the ocean in balance. And again, they are just so, so important. And by having sharks around, it means that we are often more, it means that we benefit more. The third thing is that shark bites are incredibly rare and often a case of mistaken identity. You're more likely to be bitten by a human or killed taking a selfie or killed falling into a hole on the beach, right? So, really, this is not something that we have to worry about. And then finally, it's not actually us who should be worried about sharks, it's sharks who should be worried about us. Sharks are in a very serious conservation trouble. The global abundance of sharks have declined by 70%. We kill about 80 million sharks a year. And this means that if we continue on this path, sharks could go extinct. And that's something that we need to avoid, not just for all ocean life, not just for sharks, not just for all ocean life, but also for us.